Please be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I'm going to go through my morning questions. If your answer is yes to any of my questions, please raise your hand. During the overnight visit, did any of you have any conversations amongst yourselves or with anybody else? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use an electronic device to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case? No hands are being raised. Thank you very much. State, call your next witness.
Okay, we call James Rodaiga.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Ron. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
If you could state your name and spell your last name for the record, please.
Yes, it's Jane Surdyka, S-U-R-D-Y-K-A.
Are you working at this time, ma'am?
No, I'm not.
Okay. How long have you been unemployed?
For a couple months.
And can you briefly tell us about your prior work experience?
Certainly. I'm a recreation therapist, and I was working at Halifax Psychiatric Hospital and also working with behavioral care with adult and teenagers and children.
Okay. And had you previously also been a teacher at a middle school?
Yes, I was a teacher for over 10 years.
Okay. Can you briefly tell us about your educational background, ma'am?
Certainly. My undergraduate degree is in health, physical education, recreation, and I went to graduate school in exercise physiology.
And your undergraduate degree was from University of Florida?
Yes.
And how about your graduate degree?
UCF.
Okay. Did you also qualify for the Olympics at some point in your life?
During the 80s is when I was running and they had a marathon in the Olympic Games, I would have been the top 3 runners.
Okay. And were those the Olympics that was boycotted?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you married, ma'am?
No.
And do you have any children?
No.
I'm not going to ask you for your current address, but do you live in Seminole County, Florida?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to draw your attention back to February of 2012. Back in February of 2012, were you living at the retreat at Twin Lakes?
Yes.
And in February of 2012, approximately how many years had you been living there?
That would be 4 years.
Okay. Were you living by yourself?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else in the house other than a cat?
No, just the cat.
And what is the cat's name?
Leo.
I want to draw your attention to specifically February 26th of 2012, a Sunday evening. Were you living at the address of 3021 Retreat View Circle?
Yes.
And is that a townhome, ma'am?
Yes.
Can you briefly describe the townhome? Are the bedrooms upstairs and the rest of the town living compartments or rooms, I should say, downstairs?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay. How many bedrooms are upstairs?
3.
Okay. And the bedrooms, specifically the master bedroom, was it facing the front or the back of the residence?
The back of the residence.
And does the master bedroom have a window that faces out into what's been referred to as a dog walk or a sidewalk that sits between 2 buildings?
Yes.
Okay. Do you normally keep that window open for your cat, Leo?
I normally keep the blinds open about a foot or so because there's a cat ledge at that window where my cat lays and looks out the window to the courtyard.
Okay. Does that window also have a screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to draw your attention to that Sunday evening, February 26th of 2012. Were you home that evening?
Yes.
Okay. And approximately at around 7:10 p.m., what were you doing?
Well, I came upstairs and I just finished taking my shower. I was going to lay down on the bed and read a book, waiting for my British sitcom to come on. So I didn't have any volume on my television.
Okay. So let's make sure the jury understands completely the setting that you were in. You were in your master bedroom?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you took a shower. Tell me in terms of the volume on the TV. I don't understand that. Was the TV on, but the volume wasn't on?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And you were laying on the bed, or were you sitting down, or were you standing up?
I was laying on the bed, getting ready to read.
Okay. At that time, did something draw your attention outside of your residence?
Well, first, I heard it just started bucketing down with rain, so I had the window open. So I got up and I closed the window.
Okay. So you had the window open for Leo?
Yes.
Okay. And so when you say you physically got up and actually put the window down?
Yes.
And are these the windows that, not like the old-fashioned jalousie, these actually just come down?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And when you put the window down, did you go back to on the bed, or where did you proceed to from there?
I got up and I put the window down, and when I turned around to get, sit back on my bed to read, I heard loud voices.
Okay. At that time, you mentioned the weather condition, that it was raining outside. Can you also tell us whether it was dark or whether it was light outside?
It would be dark at that time in February.
And you mentioned that something got your attention when you heard voices. Could you tell whether there was one or two individuals, or three or four? Could you tell how many individuals were outside?
With the window closed, I just heard a very loud voice, and it kind of surprised me because I thought, well, who would be out there walking their dog in the rain, in the pouring rain out in the courtyard, because that's normally where people walk their dog.
Okay. And then what happened then, ma'am?
So I heard it, I just sat on my bed and, I started to read, and I heard the loud voices again.
Okay. Now you said voices plural, so you were hearing at this point more than one voice?
I could only say that I heard a very loud, dominant voice
Okay.
at that point.
All right. Okay. The loud voice that you heard that was dominant, could you make out what was being said, if something was being said?
When I opened the window to listen.
Okay. All right. So let me backtrack a
Okay.
second. You heard voices, then you heard more voices. You got up. Did you open the window at that time?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that. How did you open? Did you physically go to the window and open it, I'm assuming? Because Leo was the only other
Yes.
living. Okay.
Yeah, Leo wasn't on the windowsill at that time.
Okay. All right.
I went over I heard the voices again, and I thought, oh my gosh, who would be out there? So I raised up the window, and to look, because I have the blinds about 1 foot high, I had to kneel down where the cat ledge was and open the window. So when I opened the window, I thought, I could hear now the voices.
Okay. So you stated you had blinds. How far down were the blinds? Were they fully covering the window? Were they only halfway, 3/4 of the way, 1/4 of the way?
About a foot, 2 feet, I could see perfectly clear.
Okay. So when you said you crouched down, you had a direct view out into what?
I kneeled down, so my hands were actually even on the cat ledge, and I would look straight out into the courtyard.
Okay. Tell us, if you could, what you heard and what you saw.
Well, like I said, I thought it was unusual that someone was out there in the pouring rain, so I opened the window, and all I could really hear, I guess I expected to open the window and hear like a conversation going on, but it really wasn't like someone out there just talking. When I opened the window, I heard like a very aggressive voice, sounded very angry, very agitated, and that kind of struck me. I don't know why I didn't hear the words. I think it was just the tone of voice that I didn't understand. I knew there was something different than just a conversation going on. But then I also heard, after the loud voice is very aggressive, almost like yelling, then I would hear like a lighter, softer, higher pitched voice.
Okay. This is my word, and if it's not correct, please correct me. did you feel that there was an exchange back and forth, or was it, when you say a dominant voice, aggressive, was the less dominant, or how did you describe the other voice?
Well, I heard more of the dominant voice. That kind of went on longer and, more aggressive. And then maybe at the end of hearing more of that voice, I would just hear a little bit of the other higher toned, softer voice, almost kind of, like talking back to that person.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get you to do.
Yes.
At that time, when you were hearing the voices, when you were looking out, could you see the voices, who they were coming from?
No, I couldn't, because I had, right next to the window is my nightstand, and I had my night light on while I was reading. So there was a glare. I could only very clearly hear, not see, because of that glare of my night light on.
And let's backtrack a second. Could you tell that definitely the voices were coming from outside, in other words, outside versus somebody inside their home?
Absolutely. It was right from where I am, it's like 20, 30 feet, and you can hear it very clearly.
Okay, so somebody or two individuals outside?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned you had did you describe it as a night light or some kind of light on? Did you turn it off?
Yes, when I was hearing that it wasn't a normal conversation and, some very aggressive going on, I thought, let me shut the light off and see if I could see who it is. Okay. And when go ahead.
Go ahead. When you turn the light off, was your view then a better view in terms of going or looking outside of the courtyard?
Yes.
Okay. If you could tell the jury what you then observed at that time.
I just reached over and shut my light off, and then when I looked down, I could see now at that point 2 people on the ground, one on top of each other.
Okay. Now, I'm assuming when you first heard the voices and you were laying on the bed and you then mentioned getting up, etc., did you have like a stopwatch or something to time yourself as to how long it took you from the first voices you heard to the very end, or where you're at right now in terms of actually being able to see outside? Were you able to estimate how long? Let me backtrack. I apologize. Did you have a stopwatch, and were you timing yourself in terms of how long from when you first heard the voices to the point where you're at now?
I wasn't timing anything. I just
Okay.
know there was a little period of time of not hearing the voices because I didn't open the window right away.
Well, that's what I was trying to make sure that the jurors understood. So there was a gap, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, all right. If you were to estimate how long it was from when you first heard the voices to the point where you're at now, where you're actually looking out and you turn off the lights, if you estimated, how long do you think it took between the first time hearing the voices and then what you're describing now?
I could only estimate a couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes at the most.
I apologize. I had you go back and estimate the time. What then are you observing when you're now looking clearly out and the light is not obstructing your view outside? What do you observe? You mentioned something. Go ahead and tell us what you observed and what you saw.
Yes. Now I look out with the light off, and I could see right near the porches that there are 2 men on the ground.
Okay.
Men, because I know they're men now, but 2 people on the ground, one on top of each other.
All right.
And it kind of looked like they were shuffling.
You're doing something with your hands, and I'm doing something now with my hands, but if you could, it's important for you to describe what you're doing. You're doing something with your hands. If you could, articulate, because the jurors are able to hear you, or see you, I should say.
Yes.
But I want, if you could, make sure the record's clear in terms of what action you're describing between the 2 individuals.
Right. Looking down, there was one person on top of each other. They were vertical, and it's kind of like you can hear scuffling, like they're moving back and forth. I didn't see arms swinging or anything like that, but just, that they were on the ground and they were wrestling or shuffling.
Okay. You mentioned that you now know there was 2 men. At the time when you were observing, could you tell at that point whether they were men, women, kids? Could you tell the race? Could you tell the gender? Could you tell, et cetera, about them other than there were 2 people on the ground?
No, I couldn't tell that. I only knew from hearing the voice, at least it sounded like a male voice, the aggressive voice that was there earlier that I heard.
Okay. All right. Tell us what then you observed and what you heard.
When I saw the 2 men on the ground, or 2 people on the
Yes.
ground and shuffling, I thought, oh my gosh, something horrible is happening. So I had my cell phone right on the side where the light was. So I just grabbed the cell phone and, brought it to me and started pressing 911.
Okay. And in the process of calling 911, was there additional sounds that caught your attention?
Yes, as I was pressing 911 is when I heard very clearly that I say the 2 yells for help.
Okay. In terms of the 2 individuals, the voices that you've described, one a more dominant or aggressive and the other one, what word did you use to describe the other one?
Higher pitched.
Okay. The yells for help that you heard at that time, could you identify whether it was the dominant, louder voice or the higher pitched one?
Well, in my opinion, I truly believe, especially the second yell for help, that was like a yelp. It was excruciating. I really felt it was the boy's voice.
And in terms of distinguishing, you said, I apologize. The last sentence you said, the voice you heard yelling for help was whose voice?
Let me object, Your Honor, at this point then to improper predicate foundation for such an opinion.
Overruled.
If you could repeat your last answer, I want to make sure all the jurors heard it. You said, in terms of the voice, the last yell for help or yelp, you said it was, who did you believe in terms of between the 2 individuals?
The boy, the younger person. It was like a boy's voice.
Okay. And when you say a younger person, is that based on just the voices, that one was louder, more dominant, aggressive, and the other one sounded like a younger individual?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me backtrack a second. You've had experience, you mentioned in the last 2 jobs you had. You've dealt with children before, have you not?
Yes, I have.
And you've dealt with adults before too, have you not?
Yes, I have.
Okay. You were telling us that you heard some kind of yelp before was that before the shot, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay. And then you heard a shot.
Well, I call it.
Tell us what you heard. I apologize. You tell us what you heard.
Sorry. After hearing the yelps for help, I still was staring down out the window, and I just know it was still one person on top of each other. Then I heard from my window, pop, 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 and I don't know what a gun really sounds like, but it was like 3 popping noises.
So you felt from your observations or hearing, you felt it was actually 3 pops, I guess you heard.
Yes, from my window.
Okay. And then what happened?
Like I said, it was still dark. I heard the popping noises. I was shaking, and just a little while later, one person got up, and that person got up and started walking right towards my window, where I could see that person really clear now.
All right. Now, the person, when you say started walking towards your window, were they headed towards your window you're talking about, literally? I know were you upstairs? Let's make sure the record's clear. You were upstairs, is that correct? Your
Yes.
vantage point. And so they were headed towards your building, the side?
That would be correct. They were coming closer to where my area is, where I live, so I could see them clearer.
Okay, all right. What, if you could, the observations of the person, and describe what that person was doing as best you can in terms of any actions was the person just walking or were they standing? How were they acting?
They just were walking closer to where I was observing from, and they came, I could see them pretty clearly now because there actually was a light on the porch that was on that left side where I was observing. And the person just walked normally and then came over to where that porch was and just put his hand to his forehead, kind of like that.
And you're like almost like well, I can't put words in your mouth. You tell us, you put your hand up to your, describe if you could, again, just demonstrate to the jury. How the person had their hand up to the forehead or to the side of their head?
Well, I was looking from above, so the person just, I could see the right side very clearly, so he just kind of, almost like a salute, just kind of had his hand there and bent his knees a little bit.
Okay. What then did you observe or hear?
Just shortly after that, I believe the neighbor from that house right there where I was watching from came out of his front door, and I watched him go down the sidewalk to Mr. Zimmerman.
Okay. The person you now know as Mr. Zimmerman, is that the person you described as walking and putting his Hand to the head?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned the person you described now as Mr. Zimmerman, and I gather you know the other person that was shot, Trayvon Martin. Did you know him before at all?
No.
Did you know Mr. Zimmerman at all before that night?
No.
Okay. And you ended up calling, actually having contact or communicating with an operator at 911, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I want to show you some photographs if I could, ma'am. And hopefully you'll be able to see it up there from your vantage point. Please let me know if you can. Thank you, Your Honor. Do you see that exhibit right there in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. And do you live, I'm going to kind of point, well, I don't know if I'll do a good job of this, but hold on. Kind of blow it up. Are you in this area right here? Are you in, am I, the arrow, is this where the apartments where you were at, or the townhouse where you were at back in February of 2012?
If that's where the courtyard is.
Yeah, assuming this is the courtyard T here. Is
Oh,
this-
okay. Now I see. Yes.
Your vantage point would have been from where the arrow is
Yes.
towards this area right here?